Hi everybody, this is going to be my Terminator Dark Fate review, and it has spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, maybe you should click away so you don't get spoiled. But if you do like spoilers, then stick around. Okay, so I can't believe that it turns out that Dani is the mother of Ripley from Aliens. Okay, just kidding. That's something from How It Should Have Ended. Whenever he does, the guy, I think Daniel Baxter, does his reviews, he always has a fake spoiler at the beginning. So no, the Alien universe is not the same as the Terminator universe. Okay, so in the very beginning of the movie, it starts out a little fuzzy, like the image on the screen is fuzzy, and that's because it's like the footage from the mental hospital of Sarah Connor talking about her nightmare, where like the explosion hits and the people in the playground turn into like charred, and they're turned into black charred bodies, and like they flutter away like leaves. And I've always liked that phrase. They flutter away like leaves, but it's like the very opening scene is implying that even though Sarah Connor and John Connor change the future, it's like Judgment Day still happens. So it's like at the very beginning, it implies this message, and I'll return to what this means later. The action in this movie, I know I've said in my other review, that's spoiler free, I've said that the action is very good. It's very cool to see the Terminators in new animation, and it's very cool to see explosions and guns and the Rev 9 splitting apart, and like all the action is very great. The car chase scene. Okay, so yeah. So at the very beginning, like the action starts very quickly. You know, the Terminators arrive. One of the things that the movie focuses on when the Terminator arrives is that the air around it, like the air around the sphere, gets very cold. So like Gabriel Luna's character lands like near some clothes in a clothesline, and like the clothes get frozen and they fall down and they shatter into pieces. I thought that was cool. Very good observation about time traveling in the Terminator universe. So then, you know, in the trailers you see the Rev 9 driving a bulldozer, I'll call it, and it's cool, but it's very apparent that it's a rehash of the Terminator 2 chase scene in I guess LA. It's like, as cool as it is, it's like, come on, I mean, it's a rehash, okay, let's face it. Okay, but one of the things I didn't like about it was that Dani's character has a brother, and like the brother dies. It's like, oh, it's sad in the movie, but it's more upsetting that the writers allowed him to die, you know. There's no reason for him. I mean, yeah, he was in the car and he was driving, but it's like, he didn't have to die, you guys. He could have just, okay, that's a little sad. I didn't like that he died. I thought it was very forced, and it's like, one of the things that people suspected about Terminator Dark Fate was that it was going to be a little more political correct. I mean, it might have been, but I mean, it's, as I said in my spoiler-free review, it's that the movies don't shape their environment, but rather the environment shapes the way a movie is made, right? The theme of the movie, the characters in the movie. So it's not the movie that's being like political, it's the environment that has become politically correct, right? I didn't really notice it that much, because it's not anything bad, it's not anything wrong. It's just a story, you know. So at the very beginning, I forgot to mention that there is a flashback, and this is like probably the biggest spoiler, because in the trailers you're always like, where's John Connor? And of course, the truth is that John Connor was killed. But I'm glad that it wasn't like a car accident or like drunk driving or something. I'm glad that like John didn't grow up to be like a teenager, but then like he went to college and he was partying, and then like he died. But rather, it was like Skynet sent back multiple Terminators to kill John at various times in his life. So it's like they killed the T-1000, But like in fact, 1 year later, there was a T-800 who was sent back, and he killed John. Like, what the heck? But I'm glad it wasn't like drunk driving. But that very beginning flashback scene, I thought it was like unused footage of a nightmare sequence from T2, but it turns out that it was a digitally aged Sarah Connor or Leno Hamilton, and then it was actually a double of John Connor. It was like a guy whose height and hair looked like John Connor, but the face, I think, was digitally put on. And then the Terminator that was there the body was like an actor, but the face was a digital remake of Arnold from, I guess, T2. So wow, it was very realistic. I thought it was unused footage from T2, but it turns out that they really used CGI to make those faces look real. Those are like those deep fake videos. Very interesting. So that I learned that like later. I just searched up online. It's really easy to find. So as for the characters, I thought the characters were always consistently portrayed. Sarah Connor was always sarcastic and sometimes funny, and also like very emotional, and because her son died. And then Arnold's character was interesting because it's like he was the T-800 that killed John Connor. So, but it's like after he killed John Connor, he just stayed around and he actually started a family. Well, he met a woman and her child who were abused by their husband, and then he just helped them out, and he started taking care of them, and he started forming a family. And he began to realize what Sarah Connor had lost, what he had taken away from her. And I wish that the movie focused a little bit more on this depth, other than just him saying it, and then Sarah Connor being like, "Oh, I don't like you because you killed my son," and then from her going to be like that, and then finally realizing at the end that, this Terminator actually changed. But I wish they stressed more about the importance of why the T-800 Carl, as he's called, changed. I mean, he kind of just says it dismissively. I wish they put more emphasis on it. He says that he changed because he chose to change. And that's one of the themes in the Terminator movies, where it's like, there is no fate but what you make for yourself, right? In T2, they changed the future. And then it's like, Carl chose to change himself. But then, so now I'll talk about the idea where Terminator Dark Fate gets its message like confused, okay? So there's a phrase where it's like, nothing is set in stone. Like, the only thing that should be set in stone is that nothing is set in stone, meaning that you should always be able to change things, right? But then, and that relates to T2, where John Connor and Sarah Connor can change the future, Carl can change himself. But then, because Mackenzie Davis's character is there, it's implying that an AI rise up is always inevitable. And it's like, well, how can it be inevitable if there's no such thing as fate? That means the movie is implying that an AI is always inevitable, despite the fact that the theme of the movie is that nothing is inevitable. And it's like, well, why are you saying that there is no fate, but then it's fated that the machines are gonna rise up? So that doesn't make any sense. But then, like, that's the only flaw of the movie. In the future, the character Grace says that Dani is the one who sparks the fire for the revolution. And it's like, she rounds up the humans to fight against the machines. So that shows how Dani doesn't believe in fate, but rather she believes that they can fight against the machines. They can change the future to become better. I think that maybe there could have been some political implications, especially about women's rights, Hispanic rights. It's like, you don't have to be forced to like take this discrimination from the patriarchy or like Caucasians, but rather you can always think of ways to move up in society, or fight for your equal rights, obviously. So there's always that, and that's fine, that's a good message. But yeah, it's just very confusing. It's like, how can Dark Fate say that there is no fate, yet it introduces the idea that an AI rising is inevitable? I think that's just kind of bad writing on maybe Tim Miller and James Cameron's part. Obviously, I think James Cameron is very adamant about the dangers of technology. There is a scene early in the movie where Dani's brother is working in a factory. He goes to work, and then he finds out, oh no, he's been replaced by a machine. And obviously, that's a real fear, I think. Especially, well, when you think about Henry Ford had his assembly line, and they had the workers, but then they replaced those workers with machines to build the cars. So I think that's kind of similar. Like, you take your Uber drivers, but what if they get replaced by self-driving cars? Like companies in Silicon Valley are doing stuff like that all the time. So yeah, Terminator Dark Fate is obviously making a social commentary about the dangers of technology, but that's always been a message of the Terminator franchise. Alright, so now I'm going to go over some of just my favorite parts, okay? So one, the car chase in the beginning was very cool with the bulldozer. Even though it was a rehash of Terminator 2, I like the Rev 9 idea. I like that Carl has a dog, but the dog does not bark. It's like Dani's family has a dog named Taco. When the Rev 9 comes to their house, the dog is barking. When I think there was another scene where the dog was barking, but like when Carl had a dog, the dog was not barking, even though dogs usually bark when there's a Terminator around. I like the part where they jump from a plane down to the ground in a Hummer. Usually, I don't like action scenes on a plane because it's just very confusing. The camera is always moving. The camera is always cutting. And it's very dark. It's very hard to see. Like, I didn't like the plane scene in Spider-Man Homecoming because it's like I couldn't tell what was going on. It's just too dark. But in Dark Fate, it was a little better. It was lit better, and I could follow the action a little bit better. And then they landed down in a dam. I'm gonna call it the Hoover Dam. If you know what dam it actually was, leave it in the comment section below. But it's like they land in a dam, and then like they're stuck in the Humvee in a Hummer with a parachute. It's just dumb, but it was very entertaining. I like the idea where it's like they're flying helicopters, although the helicopters are kind of small. I mean, obviously they can't go flying around like Black Hawk helicopters, but I guess it's fine. And then I like the fight scenes where Grace is fighting the Rev 9, where Arnold and Grace are fighting the Rev 9 at the end. And then I like the scene where it's like Grace is like, her metabolism is like anaerobic, so she needs to replenish her energy, her mana, as it were, with like injections. So it's kind of like she's a drug addict, almost. It's like she's a borderline drug addict. I mean, that doesn't really make sense, but it's like, in context of the movie, whenever she needs an injection, it's like injecting like drugs or something. So that's an interesting comparison, I think. And then another thing I thought that was interesting was that Grace keeps insisting that she's human throughout the entire movie. People are like, you're a machine. Like, no, I'm human. I'm just augmented. But it's like she's the most machine out of all the protagonists. She really doesn't care about what happens to anybody other than Dani. It's like Sarah Connor cares about what happens to Dani. Arnold cares about what happens to Dani. Her brother cares about what happens to Dani. I mean, the entire movie, Grace is always confused. Like, why are these people helping out Dani? And I think, well, not only because, Sarah Connor has been in that situation, but because Sarah Connor, Danny's brother, and Arnold, they're like human, so they have human emotions. They can empathize, they can sympathize with what Dani is going through, and they want to help. It's like the human capacity to help is within all humans in the world, in real life, and in the movie, except for Grace. So it's like, so ironically, it turns out that Grace is more machine. There are even some times where the Rev 9 is very human-like. But obviously, I mean, he's the villain, so he's supposed to, infiltrate society. He's supposed to act very kind, very nice. But still, Gabriel Luna's character is, he's just very polite to most people, but Grace is not very polite. But then again, that's her character, and that's fine. But I just found it interesting that she's always insisting that she's human, but she's not very compassionate. I was thinking about whether or not her character grows, if she has character growth through the course of the movie, and I don't really think so. She sacrifices herself for Dani at the end, but I think she would have done that no matter what, because she's sacrificing to save Dani, not and I think it's just Dani. She's not for, so you can save like the world, or so I can save Sarah Connor and Arnold, but it's just to defeat the Rev 9. It's like, unfortunately, Grace has only one purpose. Like humans, I think, can have many purposes, but Grace only had one purpose: to go back in time and protect Dani and destroy the Rev 9. So, unfortunately, I don't think Grace had very much character growth. If you disagree, tell me why in the comment section below. So, going back to my favorite parts, I like that Sarah Connor is funny and sarcastic, and that I like that. And then but there are some moments in the last fight scene in the dam where it's like she seems to be afraid of the Rev 9. Like it might just be how her face is structured, but sometimes Linda Hamilton, maybe she showed that, she's afraid of the Rev 9. And that means she isn't cartoonishly heroic. She isn't emotionless like a robot, okay? But she's a human character, okay? She shows joy, sarcasm, and fear, and sadness, obviously, when John Connor died. So she's a realistic heroine, right? A real hero faces danger head on, even if they're afraid. And then they're able to overcome their fear and overcome the obstacle, okay? So yeah, Sarah Connor, she showed fear in the face of danger, but she was still able to help defeat the Rev 9. So another thing I liked was how the Rev 9 was finally defeated. They had to literally grind up the T-1000 off of the T-800 underneath, and then they had to blow up the T-800. So they had to basically kill it like twice. It's like a boss battle where you get it down to half health, and then you had to get it down to 0 health. So going over my least favorite parts, I said that John Connor dies. I said what aloud. Grace was a wise guy. She was a real smart, and then but that's kind of her character. She's not as mellow as Kyle Reese, okay? Oh yeah, there was one scene where it's like Arnold is going to pick up his sunglasses and wear them. He has his leather jacket and everything, but he doesn't pick up his sunglasses. So one of the things I did for this movie was I went there with my buddy. I went there with a friend from church, okay? And then we saw it together, and like he was very excited about seeing the movie. Whenever an action scene happened, he was like, "Whoa, that's." He always verbally said like, "Wow, that's cool," like, "Whoa," or "Wow," or "Oh my gosh." I didn't say as much because that's just who I am, but yeah, I was a little disappointed that Arnold didn't wear the sunglasses, and then my buddy was also a little disappointed that Arnold didn't pick up the sunglasses. The Rev 9 goes into Arnold's house after they've left, and he's looking around for Dani, and I thought, maybe he's going to pick up the sunglasses and wear them. But I mean, he doesn't wear the sunglasses. So nobody wears the sunglasses in this movie except for maybe Sarah Connor, and you see her wearing sunglasses in the trailer. So some questions I have after the movie, especially for Tim Miller and James Cameron, is why did John Connor have to die? I think that's very disrespectful. or not disrespectful, but just annoying. Like really, you couldn't think of any better way to write him off other than killing him off, like Dani's brother. You couldn't think of a more creative way. So it's like in Terminator Genesis, right? I watched that, but I don't really like it because I don't really like any of the characters. They don't have any connection to any of the characters. They're just one-dimensional rehashes of the original Sarah Connor, of the original Kyle Reese, of the original Arnold T-900, and of the original John Connor. So I don't feel a connection to any of the characters in Terminator Genesis. But in Terminator Dark Fate, I do have a connection to Sarah Connor because I like this character. I want to see her win. And I also like John Connor, as like edgy as he might have been in Terminator 2. Like, come on. I actually care about this character, and it's like, well, maybe that's why they killed him off. So you can really feel the same way that Sarah Connor felt when she saw John Connor die. I think you're supposed to feel bitter about it, and maybe that's one of the reasons why at the end when Arnold sacrifices himself to save Dani and destroy the Rev 9, he says for John. Now I haven't fully comprehended or thought about what for John means, but it's like perhaps it's a message to Sarah Connor and to Carl himself that you can change, that you can always change. And then finally, the last question is that does Dani know how to be a leader because Grace was sent to the past, or was like Dani able to naturally become a leader and then send Grace to the past? Because is it now inevitable that Dani will always send Grace to the past? At the end of the movie, Dani says that she won't ever let Grace die for her again. So I think they're trying to set up a sequel where it's like they destroy, where they change the future. But I don't know about that. I don't really know if they will be able to make a sequel to Terminator Dark Fate, just because I don't really want a sequel to Dark Fate. But if a sequel is going to clear up the questions I have about why there can be no fate yet an AI rise up is inevitable, then I'm all for it. Well, I'm mostly for it. And then finally, the last question I have is, why didn't they just use the EMP right away? It's like they could have used it. The Rev 9 was in range of the EMP, wasn't he? It's like, why didn't they just use it then and kill him off? And it's like they had to get to the Hoover Dam. It's like the EMP was destroyed by then. Like, why didn't they just open up the briefcase and use the EMP right then and there? The Rev 9 was in his helicopter. He was charging in. They shoot the helicopter. He comes running into like the abandoned building. It's like, just use the EMP. Don't run away. Just use it. Just use it. They didn't use it and got destroyed. It's like, come on. So, in the end, I think the action of Terminator Dark Fate really distracts you from its convoluted theme, its convoluted thematic message. So that's why the title of this video is, the action almost makes up for the questions I have about the theme, but it only almost makes up for it. Because I'm still confused, and I still dislike that John Connor died, and I dislike that the movie is saying that there is no fate but what we make for ourselves. But also, an AI uprising is inevitable. So thanks for watching. Tell me what you thought of this video in the comment section below. Tell me what you thought of the movie if you've seen it. Tell me if you just watched this video to listen to what happened even though you did not watch Terminator Dark Fate. I'm very ashamed. You should always support the movie you see, or you should get it from the library. But be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for watching. Bye.